Hello, everybody. How are we today? How are we today? Oh, much better. Thank you. My name is Sarah Colley. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator here at the Great Falls Public Library, and I am so grateful to see all of you here today and join us for an author talk. The library is all about connecting people and knowledge, and a lot of that is through author talks or armchair travelers. I see that we have some folks from that too, and other events that we always have going on. As we go into the fall season, we do more and more inside, so thank you for joining us and being here. I know it's a pretty nice day outside, so you know, it's hard to give those nice days up. But today I want to introduce Mike Hoggan. He is a retired wildlife service specialist and a lifelong outdoorsman who spent most of his life working the land and living close to it. Over more than 40 years, he worked side by side with livestock producers across rural Nevada and the Rocky Mountains of Montana, helping manage predator problems from coyotes to grizzlies, and doing whatever needed to be done to keep the balance. Today's stories are all true stories and are all real life encounters, I suppose we can say. So Mike's going to walk us through his book, Between Predator and Prey. And again, thank you all for being here, and please join me in welcoming Mike Hoggan.
Thanks so much, and thanks for coming, and thanks Casapia Books at the library, and that we can be here tonight. So, this book, I'll kind of tell you a little bit about the history of the book before we get into it. I was always kind of a low-key type guy, you know, and about 15 to 20 years ago, I was talking to this friend of mine, and brought up this story, and it was up north, and this guy had a lot of sheep, and the coyotes were killing quite a few lambs. And so one morning he went out, and here was this coyote, just killed a lamb, and he got his rifle out, and he shot at the coyote, and he missed, and he killed one of his sheep that was standing behind him. And then he sold his sheep, and we were talking about this, dang, I forgot that story, and I couldn't believe that I had. And I thought, you know what? Because a lot of wild stuff happened, and I just thought in my mind for my kids, a boy and a girl, and I thought, you know, I'm gonna write some of these stories down in a spiral notebook, and you know, for them later in life, you know, if they're interested in stuff. So I did this. Nobody knew about it. So 10 years later, my lovely wife Maureen right here, who is the backbone behind the whole project. If it wasn't for her, we wouldn't be sitting here right now, because there would be no book. But anyway, she finds these spiral notebooks, and she's looking through it. She says, what is this? And so I told her, and she says, you got to write a book. And I said, no, I am not going to write a book. And I was still working then, this was quite a few years ago. And she kind of kept, that wasn't the last time that conversation took place. But I was adamant, you know, I wasn't, like I say, I was a low-key type guy. I just did my job. And so anyway, just before I retired about 6 years ago, I was up on the Canadian border. And I was at this ranch, and one of the ranchers there had this book. And it was called Echoes from the Prairies, and it was a historical about North Toole County. And anyway, he said, have you read this one? I said, no. And I read quite a few, because DePuyer did one, Conrad, in the little towns years ago. We had these historicals about the families that lived there. And see, I'd like to read that, because I knew a lot of people in that country, and I thought it'd be interesting to read about their families and, you know, how they got there and the struggles and such. And anyway, when I started reading, it wasn't just the families that I knew. It was every chapter in that book, every family, because when they wrote that in 1976, there was still Depression people, there was people, homesteaders. I mean, and these stories and what these people went through just, and I thought, you know, if they didn't write that book when they did, that history would be lost. And it got me thinking about Maureen here in the book, and it, 2 or 3 days, I guess, I pondered on that, and then finally I said, no, you know, I'm going to do it. And I told Maureen, I said, all right, let's do a book. So that's how that started. So it took 5 years in the making. A lot of it was winter time on a 20 below zero, you know. But anyway, we ended up doing it. And so that was good. So there's a short little video here that Maureen's gonna put on, and she did all this in the book. She did the cover, she did the graphics, she did everything. But anyway, a little video here, a short one, and then it'll go into a PowerPoint, and then we'll have time for some questions. So. That pilot on the right, I flew it for 26 years, driving the Mustang. So this book only came out about 6 months ago, and we've already had some tremendous response. So I was pretty young when I started. In the first part of the book, it tells about when I worked at ranches and how the coyotes had killed the calf and how that changed my life. But anyway, I wasn't really too much older than that right there when it all began. So I worked on this ranch for a couple of years, and then when I did finally get my Wildlife Services job, all told, I lived 10 years in a sheep wagon just like that. And most of that was year-round. So it was 5 days a week. And one spring I even had to stay in a tent. So it wasn't the most glamorous of accommodations, but it is what you had to do to be out where, down in Nevada when I started, it was mostly sheep and mostly coyotes and mountain lions. So at the beginning, I had a horse they gave me, and then it got a little bit faster with that, and then it got really fast with that helicopter. So from 1978 to 2020 when I retired, there was a lot of changes in the program. So when I worked up north, I had those 5 counties. And in those 5 counties, anytime livestock was killed, I was the one that got called to determine if a bear, a wolf, a coyote killed it, or if nothing killed it at all, and maybe one of those animals was eating on it. And so that was kind of a big area, a lot of responsibility. And after I retired, there's actually 3 people in there now. There's more bears, there's more wolves, but I don't know, I was run pretty ragged through those years. So the very first of the book is, there's a couple of chapters of when I was on the sheep ranch. And so there's some humor in here. This one, a lot of people say this is one of their favorites. It's a pretty funny one. And this one also, this takes place up here along the front. Bears got into this gouse sheep, and anyway, it tells all about that. And then there's some pretty scary stuff in there too. And I spent a lot of time on the reservation. And that is, after I retired especially, is something I miss the most about the job, because I just loved it up there. I love being there, I love being with the people. I still have a lot of good friends up there. And so I was the one that was responsible for the wolf damage there and the coyote. And then on the bears, they had their own bear people. But a lot of times when something was a little sketchy, especially, they'd call me up and I'd come and help. And there's some of that in the book that tells about the time that I've spent on the reservation. And so you got this funny and the scary, and then there was just some exciting stuff. And this catches a lot of people's attention. So when you read the book, and I get this a lot, Maureen did these illustrations, and somebody will finish a chapter, and then they'll see that illustration. Oh, I gotta go see what this is about. But so, and this is one of the more exciting ones too. It wasn't quite as scary, or it wasn't funny, but it was exciting. So I dealt with a lot of predation. This is bear damage on the right with sheep in one night. Sometimes they'll just go in there and they'll kill like that, not necessarily because they're hungry, they just get on a feeding frenzy. On the top, that's how a wolf would grab a calf by a back leg or front leg, and you wouldn't know from the outside so much until you skinned it back. And when you see that dark purple, that happened when the animal was alive. So that's how you could tell if it was killed or if it wasn't killed. And if it wasn't killed, it just fed on. That big hole there is a wolf den. And then down on the bottom, in the early years, I caught a lot of bears on bee-yard damage. And especially around Shoto. And I added up one time, and that was mostly bees, but there's some sheep too. But I've caught 11 grizzly bears right in or on the outskirts of Shoto through my career. But about 15 years ago or so, we started using electric fence. And once we did, it stopped. I never had to catch another bear in a bee yard again. And then not only for the bee yards, but like Maureen and I, we have sheep. And we put them in electric fence at night because we have grizzly bears where we live. And you can sleep good at night. You know, and so whatever it takes, just so people can coexist with these predators. This is up along the front, and that's a bear that off to the right there, that it's actually in the snare, killed the calf right there, and it's tranquilized. And most of the time, those bears would be moved. It all depended on what the bear did. But I would say, especially in the early years, 95% of the bears I captured were moved. And then if they came back with the males, it was second strike, you're out. It was sows, it was 3 strikes, you're out. But if they had cubs, they got more than 3 strikes. And I think now there's so many bears, I retired several years ago, that they're a little more, less tolerant of them. And they've also learned that it's just these few individual bears that are causing the problems. And if they get rid of that bear, it's not only good for the livestock owner, but for the other bears, because if there wasn't somebody like me, what I was doing, then they would take care of it themselves. And they're not necessarily gonna get the right bear. So I did a lot of wolf work also, especially on the reservation. And that was a whole different deal. It was tough. Some people say, you know, wolves smart, coyotes smart, whatever. Coyotes are smarter than wolves. And wolves can get smart. But the thing with wolves is they'll be here and then it might be 10 miles that way the next day. Whereas coyotes, if they're there, started killing on a place, they'll stay pretty close and keep doing it, and then you have a chance to stop it. So we took did a lot of other things. Here I'm taking a blood sample, checking for tularemia, bubonic plague. This is a wolf that, this chapter's in that book too, Looking Glass. And this wolf was packing their goat. In the morning, they looked out the window and it killed their goat and was packing it off, and they had the right to shoot it for doing that. And they called me up and I came up and I said, I hope that's it, and that was the only goat they had. And I said, well, I should take care of it. And when I got there, I see all these baby calves around, and I thought, oh, that ain't good. And when you read the chapter, you'll see what all happened. But and so that's a wolf over there that is caught. We have a foot snare that we used, and it was a chain that went around, and it just kind of held them and kept the circulation going. And it didn't. I mean, it worked really well. And then that way, when we put a collar on, and I don't know if everybody's seen this. This is a wolf collar and smaller, and the bears have the same one, but it's bigger. And so if I'm going to put this collar on, then, you know, we can turn it loose and then the wolf's fine and join the pack. And if they keep killing, then we might have to go in and manage them. But so I did quite a bit of wolf work through the years. And mountain lions. The electric fencing for the sheep not only helped with the bears, but it helped with the lion problem, and it helped with the coyotes and everything. So where applicable, that fencing worked great. So in every one of these stories, it's just kind of a different, I mean, some of the best calls I had, I don't know if the best or the most memorable, or, but each one of these with a lion, bears, wolves, it, you know, and when the book was all said and done, I think it kind of covered everything. And I even did, I think it's the next one, go ahead, Marie. Yes. And this is what a lot of people are interested in, and maybe long wanted to buy the book, is this chapter on mutilations. So I looked at these, starting 30 years ago. And everybody knows in the 70s there was this rash of mutilations and then on and off. And so I guess about 92, and that one summer there was like maybe 10 of them. I'd go out. So, you know, I was the one that was always called to go out and look, and like I was saying, because I had to determine, you know, what it was, whatever killed it. And so and I'd go out and look at this stuff, and I thought, I don't know. You know, this isn't animals. And a lot of times they're behind locked gates, and where the grass was, there's no tire tracks coming and going. And what was really strange, so these three pictures on the left, bottom left, that was a month ago, because they're still going on to this day, and that was overnight. So the evening before that was a 2-year-old heifer, and she had a calf. She was not there, and in the morning she was, and it wasn't that hot. And anyway, you see that white, it takes weeks or months for a bone to turn white out in the sun. And this was overnight. And then on the udder, the 4 teats were cut off. And that's the black Angus, you know, that black bag, and it looks like it got hot or whatever, you know, and that skin had kind of went. So they loaded it in the back of the pickup, took it to the ranch, went to put it in the pit, and when they slid it out the back of the pickup on the tailgate, all the hair on one side came off down to the hide, just like it got superheated, and just strange. So off to the right there, those pictures, and they're always a little different, you know, but you can see that bottom one, even though it looks like it's all kind of dried a bit, it wasn't there that long, but you can see there's blood in the water there below it. And if you get on computer and Google cattle mutilation images, you'll see these same type cuts in South America and Europe, all over the world. So when I very first started looking at these, I thought, I don't want no part of this. I just, I never took any pictures. People ask me, I don't know, I just leave. And then I'd get, like that first summer, there was 10. And then there'd be a couple of years there was none. And then all of a sudden there's a summer, and then there's 10 or 15 or whatever. And then a couple of years, none. And then again. And then after that, it was every summer. And I don't know how many I look at, how many people send me pictures of, or they call me about it. And it was to the point where I could tell right off, I really didn't need to be there because I knew it wasn't predators that did it.
Did you find that there were always no bother?
No, not always. No, and it was funny, is like the ones near water and stuff, there's no tracks or nothing.
Right.
I mean, you would think you would see something. And then I've seen several times where they like were moved. And I mentioned that in one of the stories. So you know what, I wasn't gonna do it. I'm opening a can of worms here, but I'll do this chapter on mutilation. And so I picked 5 or 6 of the best ones. And anyway, I don't wanna be a spoiler on it, but I think if you read that chapter, you would enjoy every one of those experiences. But there was so much more than that, but I just picked some of them. And went ahead and stuck my neck out here. And now a guy, a couple days ago from the Billings Gazette calls up and he wants to interview me. And I told him, I said, you don't know how many times that people, in the last 35 years now, that people have called and wanted to interview me on cattle mutilations. I said, I've always said no. And I said, but I opened myself up with this book, so I don't know. I'm still debating. He's supposed to call Thursday. We'll go from there. But anyway, there could have been so much more in that, but I wanted to get that history in there, and also I wanted for people to see what Wildlife Services was really like, because there's like a lot of negative publicity because once in a while we'd have to kill a bear or kill some wolves or whatever, but this book tells why and how much better it is, like I said before, for not only the predators or the livestock, but for the predators and for everybody, to build tolerance for this. And to tell people, this isn't just a government freebie. The sheep and cattle in Montana pay 50 cents to $3 a head towards a program every year. Part of Livestock owns that helicopter that I fly in, or flew in. And so if you read one of these negative stories on Wildlife Services, they never mention that. So it was like a year ago. Maureen and I was out, and I get this call on my cell phone, said Washington, D.C. Well, I usually don't answer my cell phone, especially, well, maybe it's the president, So I answer, and this gal gets on there, and she says, oh, Mike, she says, congratulations on your retirement. This so-and-so from NPR or whatever. And I says, oh, well, thanks. It's been a few years ago now, but, and then, hey, we're going to do an article on Wildlife Services. Was wondering, would you mind visiting with me a little bit for that? I says, no, I retired. I said, oh. And she says, we're going to do this article anyway. And so it might help, if you would visit. Okay, so I talked to her for half hour. But one part, and this is in the book, and I told her, I said, I always said that all these people that were against Wildlife Services, if they could have went with me for a week and seen what I did, I said 90% of them would change their mind. 10%, no matter what you show them, whatever you tell them, they're not going to. And she said, well, in the same respect, she says, if you went with some, bear lover and spend a week with him, you might change. I said, what makes you think I don't like bears? And I said, that's like saying the policeman doesn't like people because of the job they have to do. And she was just like quiet, she didn't know what to say. So that is, outside of preserving this history, to be able to present to people that, and a lot of people are unaware of what goes on. I mean, why it's done and why we did it, and the job I had for so many years. It was a great career. It was, and it was one of the few government jobs that you would drive into somebody's yard in a government truck, and they'd have a crack of a smile on their face, thinking, you might be there to help them a little bit. So, anyway, so Maureen did all these illustrations. These are the chapters of the book. And like I say, the very first part is Nevada when I was with the sheep, and then about the time the Hutterites is the first. So I did a chapter, kind of an in-depth deal on the Hutterites, and that's another, you know, a lot of people don't understand how a colony works in that, and that chapter will explain a lot. And then these are all up along the front, reservation. But there's a lot of bears. And, you know, like, you could, I guess, read a lot of articles on coyotes and coyote, but as far as the bears and wolves, in this part of it, there's not a whole lot out there to read. So. Oh, yeah, so that chapter, the devil bear, well, I don't want to, oh, you know what, as long as we're here, I'll tell you, I won't spoil it, I don't think too much. But so this bear here, it was in May, it had killed a heifer up on the front. And this is another reason to justify all this that goes on. And so I went up there and I caught it. It was the second night. So whenever I was responsible for all the bear trapping on livestock. And once it was caught, I'd work with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. And they're bear specialists, and then we decide what to do. And so he came out there and I caught it. I said, it was a big male, and I says, I think this is the one that did it. And very few of these bears kill cattle, you know, and he said, well, it's been 2 nights. He says, you don't know. He says, let's put a collar on it, turn it loose. So anyway, he made some calls to Fish and Wildlife Service. That's a whole different agency, and it's so confusing, the three. But anyway, they had the final say. I mean, if we had to kill a bear, turn a bear loose, whatever, they had to say for what needs to be done, and they said, yeah, turn it loose. So they put a collar on it, took it to the west side, and came right back, the collar fell off. And all of a sudden, I got all these calves being killed. And I mean, in the summertime, these people don't have to be out there every day looking at their cattle. So 2 days later, 3 days later, they find this calf, and you kind of tell just by what was left of it that a bear killed it. And then there's 5 other bears there, and 10 other bears or whatever. So it's to the point, unless I had a really fresh kill, I couldn't set a snare, I couldn't try to catch it, because there was all kinds of bears. And you're going to catch a bear, but you don't know if it's the right one or not. So you put cameras up. So these kills that take place, and I put my cameras up, and here's this big bear with these 2 round ear tags, and I told him, I said, that's that bear from this spring. He's in here killing all these calves, but I couldn't do anything until October. Except for go up there and I verified so they get paid for the loss, because the Livestock Loss Board, the state, pays for any livestock killed by bears and wolves, and now lions. So October comes along, I get a call, here's a registered heifer killed. I went up and set up on it. Next morning, here's this bear, and it's the same one. Here's the orange ear tags, about 200 pounds heavier now, and eating well all summer long. And so anyway, that bear ended up that time being euthanized. Okay, so between the 1st of May and like the middle of October, that particular bear killed over $35,000 of calves. And once that bear left, there was no more calves killed. In the next 2 or 3 years, I mean, there's more bears every year. There's bears everywhere. It was that one. So if you go into the Great Falls, I think it's, what is it, the North Tower, Maureen? Whatever, that stuffed grizzly bear on the 2nd floor, that's that one. So, but nobody, I don't think, knows the story of that up there.
Where is it at?
It's in Memphis.
It's on the back.
Yeah, it's on the 2nd floor of the...
At the South Tower?
South Tower, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, oh, and then on the...
It's on the back of the book.
Oh, yeah, and so anyway, this is that bear right there. And then like that story's all about it. So I kind of blew the story so you guys won't be surprised. Anyway, so
Does it still have its orange ear tags?
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, just recently, I get a good friend sitting back there, a couple of good friends, and we got several good friends here, but he was telling me about up in Augusta, in 1947, there was a sheep herder, and he worked on this ranch for 24 years, and he went out there one day, and a grizzly bear had killed some sheep, and he went up, and the bear come after him, and he shot at it, and he missed, and the bear got him down, and put a hole in his head, grabbed him on the shoulder, took him in the brush, and he buried him. And when the bear left, and the guy still alive, he got out, and he took off crawling, got through a couple fences, and got up on this ridge, and one of the neighbors just happened to be riding by on a horse and found him. He was still alive. And they got him into Great Falls, and after that he died. But Outdoor Life had written a story about that, and had interviewed the rancher up here to get it, and there's a lot more to it. It's just really a great story. But, you know, the bottom line, in 1973, if Outdoor Life hadn't written that story, who would have known that now? And it's the same with this book. And, you know, when he was telling me that, I told him, I said, you know, that makes me just even better yet. And you know, I wouldn't care if I made $10 on this book, or I'm just so glad that the history was preserved, and like I say, it's a time that the whole world's changed, and especially this program, it's not the same as when I was there, and it never will be, but that just kind of captured that, you know, 40 years of a time frame, and what we did and why we did it. So, anyway, so now I'll just open that up for some questions. Did I miss anything? Okay.
How long did the transmitter work on that 12-year collar?
Usually 2 to 3 years. Yeah. And there's another type of collar. This is just what they call a VHF collar, and this is a line of sight. So you have to have a receiver, and up to 30 miles, you can pick this up line of sight. If this collar is over the ridge 100 yards, it won't work. So they have another collar, they're very expensive, they're putting on some, and it's a GPS, and on the back, it transmits to a satellite twice a day. So it'll give the location of that wolf or bear or whatever you're tracking, and you get on the computer and it'll pinpoint every day, 6 in the morning, 6 in the evening, whatever you set that collar to pick it up at. So.
Do you ever lose those things? Did the bear get them off?
Oh, yeah, sometimes they get them off, or they'll wear off, they'll break off. And so that's a good question. And then once that happens, like this, the signal is beep, beep, beep. So as soon as this is inactive for like, I don't know, 12 hours or something like that, it'll send a mortality signal. It'll deep, 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 deep. So you come with the receiver, and then you go out in the brush and you can find it. And either the collar has fell off and the animal that was carrying it's dead.
Because there's no movement, it sends.
There's no movement for 12 hours. I believe it's 12, I'm afraid it's hard, but, so. And this, like I say, is a wolf, and the bear is basically the same color, but bigger. And then it depends, so there's like a little spacer here that, you know, you can hook them together, so you can put 2 bolts here, 2 bolts there. So if you have a young bear, you put a cotton spacer, and so when that's on there, it'll, in time, usually 6 months or so, it'll rot off to where that'll come apart and the collar will drop. That way, as that bear's growing, that collar will never get too tight. And then as time goes on, you know, one that's not growing a lot, you can put a polyester, and then if you've got an old bear that is, you know, never gonna grow any more than that, you can just put a brass one on there, and it'll stay on, so. But the older bears, the big bears, like, you know, like that one there, those collars, and that's why that one slipped off, their neck is so big, it's bigger a lot of times on the older ones than their head. So if they catch it just right, you know, it'll slip off. So, but
Is there very many cattle mutilations today?
Yes, that, in fact, that one I showed with that white jaw and that was a month ago. And then, just west of Conrad, there's a gal, and she writes, in several publications, her name is Lisa Schmidt, I don't know, okay.
Mhm.
So Lisa calls up, and she doesn't live very far away. And she said, I got a mutilation over here. And so she sent some pictures. It was the same old stuff, cited, but this one had been there, and it was kind of hot, had been out there for a day and a half or whatever. It was showing signs of being out in the heat. But you see the cut here, and then it was a stair, and there was a circle right here. And then right here on the shoulder, there was a hole. And she said, what's this hole on the shoulder? And I said, well, I've seen that quite a few times, and a veterinarian told me that he thinks that they might access into the rib cage, like where the heart is or whatever. And I said, but I've skinned a lot of mutilations to see if, there's bullets or any trauma or anything else. I'm figuring out how they maybe died. But I says, I never went that deep. And she says, well, there's a little water right here. So she reaches her hand down in that hole, and it did. It went down in that rib cage, and she says, I could feel the ribs, and she says, and the lungs were kind of laying at the bottom. She says, there's no heart. I says, well, that proves that theory was right, I guess. But not only have I seen cattle, and I mentioned that in this chapter too. There's horses, sheep. I've seen ram sheep mutilated. Not any ewes that I know, but rams. And one buffalo.
Do you think,
Yeah.
do they mutilate the wild ones too?
I'm sure they might, but they'd be in a place where a lot of times maybe they're not found.
Yeah.
More desolate of an area. Like this bison, it was a bull, and the guy called it, it was up by Kiowa on the reservation. And it was locked gates, and driving a mile. The guy meets us there, and I was with the tribal wildlife services guy that I worked with. And so we went in, and so first thing I noticed when we drive up there is the belly's cut out. And I've seen that a lot on these cows, and I never could figure out, here this big circle of hide would be gone, and no knife marks either. I mean, it's just like clean. I mean, it's just, here's the meat, here's the circle hide gone, and there's no hide around there. And in later years, I thought, I wonder if they take that and whatever they're retrieving off of this carcass, whether it be the tongue or whatever, and they're putting it in that, folding it up to keep it clean. And that kind of made sense to me on that. But anyway, I see this circle on this bison, and Glenn and I got out, and I says, oh, and he goes, yeah, we walk over, and the way that thing was laying, its legs were down and stuff, and we walk up and I ask that guy, he says, does this bull still have his testicles? I don't know. So Glenn went over and picked the leg up, and there was this hole like that where the testicles had been. And anyway, Glenn gets down there and he's looking, he goes, oh, check this out. And so between the hole on the belly and then that hole where the testicles were and that little piece of hide, it was all loose. And he goes, there's no penis here. And it was gone. And there was not a knife mark. And I've butchered a lot of animals and stuff, and I mean, when you're doing that, you're going to see knife marks when you're taking hide off, and not, just. And then this one had a circle around the eye, kind of like, we were looking earlier. And like I just told that guy, well, it wasn't wolves. Oh, yeah. Well, then this is in the book there too. Or no, maybe this isn't. So I was doing a necropsy on a cow, and it was one that had the hole here and the same old stuff in the hide. And anyway, when I skinned this thing out, and there was no other marks. I mean, it just where this stuff was gone, there was no trauma, there was no bullet holes, there was nothing. Anyway, get all done, and Maureen happened to be with me that day, and anyway, we drove off, and I looked down, my watch had quit, like 20 minutes before. And so I said, well, that's strange, and so I reset it, and it worked. And It worked fine 2 years before that, it worked fine 3 years after that, it was just doing that big cropsy that didn't stop. And I thought, oh, that's kind of weird. But,
Yeah.
but where I finally quit doing that, it was a couple of years before I retired. And I had this calf, and it was a big calf, and I skinned it out and did this and that. And right when I got done, the top of my legs started hurting. And it kind of hurt pretty bad. And that's why I just bent over too much, but usually that never happened. Maybe like for a month, my legs hurt. And I thought, there was something there, I had to bend.
Yeah.
And that was the last one. After that, it's not predators. So,
Well, I want to go back to the devil bear. You mentioned that when you would find the dead calf, there were lots of other bears around. Now, I'm guessing that's because these aren't killer bears who would kill a calf, but they're going to eat what's left.
Exactly. I'm glad you mentioned that. So when I very first started, and this is how few bears there were, I mean, there were still quite a bit, but nothing like we got now. I had 10 days, and if a bear killed livestock, I could set snares or put a culvert, whatever I wanted to do, and I could leave those there for 10 days until they had to be pulled. And there was places on these creek bottoms and that where there's a lot of bears that I wouldn't leave them that long, but that was my option. Well, towards the end, I mean, you only had that first night, and after that, they could smell those carcasses 10 miles away. I mean, depending on the wind and stuff, and you'd be surprised how they would come from all directions to feed. And so yeah, it made it a little more challenging. But after I retired, I tell you, they were a little more aggressive towards the bears that were causing problems. After that, it was just like that devil bear. It just slowed it down so much. You'd have a kill once in a while, but it was nothing like we used to have with these same bears doing it over and over and over again.
So, did you say coyotes are smarter than wolves? They are?
I mean, they're all individuals. It's like
Yeah.
people or whatever, But yeah,
Is
they're.
it harder to trap a coyote than it is a
Oh,
wolf?
yes. Yes.
Now, are coyotes pack animals the way wolves are?
No.
See, I really know nothing about
Yeah, no, that's a good
did
question.
anything in my life.
Yeah, so coyotes, they'll kind of run in packs with a family group. After they have their pups, that's when
Yeah.
you'll mostly see them in bunches. And then at breeding time in January, they kind of pack up. But wolves will stay in those same packs all the time. I found wolves so interesting to work with, and their social structure. How you could go in there and you could just scatter them wolves every direction, and by the next day they were all back together in that one bunch. Whereas coyotes on the family groups, if you did that, they just went their own separate ways, and that was the end of that. But I really enjoyed working with wolves and the challenge, and they're like the rest of them. Not all wolves are livestock killers, but it seemed like once they start, and they figure it out. And in a way, can you blame them? I mean, I'd rather eat beef than a jackrabbit.
They say that about dogs too, though, that,
But,
once they kill an animal, that they won't stop.
Yeah.
Like chickens or something, so.
Yeah, a lot of animals are like that. And then I've seen too a wolf pack that will live amongst the cattle and calves in a small pack, and then once that pack gets so big and they're hungrier, and then once they start, then and I've seen where the old ones, the alpha, male and female, they'll keep everybody in check. And I've seen that where, say the old male got killed, and then all of a sudden this pack's causing all kinds of problems, and I know in my heart that wolf was keeping them from doing it, the old one. So it was interesting. That job every day, that when the phone would ring every morning when I went to work, I really liked. And like I say, it was a job I really felt helped people and animals too. Not only livestock, but the predators themselves.
So did you shoot very many coyotes from a helicopter?
Yeah, quite a few. And you had to, I mean, there's places there at calving time when they come in and, you know, they would kill calves, but like one guy told me one time, he says, you know, the cows kill more calves on my operation than the coyotes, because the coyotes come in there, they're after the afterbirth, the cow just has a calf, she's all worked up trying to protect her calf, she tromples it. And so we could go in, and like I say, they pay towards the program. I could go into a cattle ranch that's having problems, I can thin coyotes out, I might not have to go back there ever, or I might have to go back next year, or I might have to go back 5 years later, it all depended. So, yeah, it's something that needs to be done, especially since they're not worth anything and people aren't trapping them anymore, and there's just so many coyotes. Yeah.
So, did you say the coyote would kill the mother cow?
No,
The calf?
the mother cow would kill her calf, trampling it.
Oh.
Yeah, protecting it from the coyotes. And the coyotes might just be there to get the afterbirth or something, or they might be trying to get the calf too, who would know? But, yeah, that would happen quite often. And then there was always a circumstance with
Would
coyotes.
the farmer get paid then for that?
No, they were just out. The only ones they get paid for is if it was a grizzly bear, or wolf, and then they added mountain lions to it. But with coyotes and calves, it was always a circumstance. It was, the cow had the calf next to the fence, and the calf would start getting up, got on the other side of the fence, so the cow couldn't help it. A lot of them I seen is a calf would get on the ice, and the coyotes would get it, and the cow could walk on the ice to help it, and they kill it that way. A lot of times the cows would leave their calves back to go to feed or water or whatever, and kind of hide them in the brush, and the coyotes would find them and kill them that way. So there was always a circumstance. One coyote with a cow and a calf would never get that calf. There was always something. Whereas wolves, that was a whole different deal. I mean, you get a pack of wolves and they could do whatever they wanted.
So was the coyote kills mostly really young calves? Like
Yes,
a week
yes.
old?
Once those calves got, you know,
Couple months?
3 or 4 days, even less than that. I mean, if they were a week old and from there beyond, yeah, they were pretty good. Unless the ice deal, once in a while, they might get a little bigger ones.
Well, and I mean, it seems to me, and I just guess about things, the reason for this rule that people don't get paid for coyote kills is because as a rancher, I could probably go out if I knew how to shoot a gun and all that stuff and just kill coyotes at will.
Yes.
It's not like they're an endangered species. or anything.
Exactly. That's a good point there too, whereas the wolves were kind of helped, you know, to repopulate their historic area, and then the bears were protected. So, you know, they've recovered. I mean,
What made them take in mountain lions as being paid?
well, that was another one that, you know, I think they're tolerant if a producer could catch a mountain lion killing livestock, they could shoot it. So whenever I was responsible for all the bear trapping on livestock, and once it was caught, I'd work with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, and they're bear specialists, and then we decide what to do. And so he came out there and I caught it. I said, it was a big male, and I says, I think this is the one that did it. And very few of these bears kill cattle, you know, and he said, well, it's been 2 nights. He says, you don't know. He says, let's put a collar on it, turn it loose. So anyway, he made some calls to Fish and Wildlife Service. That's a whole different agency, and it's so confusing, the three. But anyway, they had the final say. I mean, if we had to kill a bear, turn a bear loose, whatever, they had to say what needs to be done, and they said, yeah, turn it loose. So they put a collar on it, took it to the west side, and came right back, the collar fell off. And all of a sudden, I got all these calves being killed. And I mean, in the summertime, these people don't have to be out there every day looking at their cattle. So 2 days later, 3 days later, they find this calf, and you kind of tell just by what was left of it that a bear killed it. And then there's 5 other bears there and 10 other bears or whatever. So it's to the point, unless I had a really fresh kill, I couldn't set a snare, I couldn't try to catch it because there was all kinds of bears. And you're going to catch a bear, but you don't know if it's the right one or not. So you put cameras up. So these kills that take place, and I put my cameras up, and here's this big bear with these 2 round ear tags, and I told him, I said, that's that bear from this spring. He's in here killing all these calves, but I couldn't do anything until October. Except for go up there and I verify so they get paid for the loss, because the Livestock Loss Board, the state, pays for any livestock killed by bears and wolves, and now lions. So October comes along, I get a call, here's a registered heifer deal, I went up and set up on it. Next morning, here's this bear, and it's the same one. Here's the orange ear tags, about 200 pounds heavier now, and even well less than long. And so anyway, that bear ended up that time being euthanized. Okay, so between the 1st of May and like the middle of October, that particular bear killed over $35,000 of calves. And once that bear left, there was no more calves killed. In the next 2 or 3 years, I mean, there's more bears every year. There are bears everywhere. It was that one. So if you go into the Great Falls, I think it's, what is it, the North Tower, Maureen? Whatever, that stuffed grizzly bear on the 2nd floor, that's that one. So, but nobody, I don't think, knows the story of that up there.
Where is it at?
It's in Memphis.
It's on the back.
Yeah, it's on the 2nd floor of the.
At the South Tower?
South Tower, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, oh, and then on the.
It's on the back of the book.
Oh, yeah, and so anyway, this is that bear right there. And then like that story's all about it. So I kind of blew the story, so you guys won't be surprised. Anyway, so.
Does it still have its orange ear tags?
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, just recently, I got a good friend sitting back there, a couple of good friends, and we got several good friends here, but he was telling me about up in Augusta, in 1947, there was a sheep herder, and he worked on this ranch for 24 years, and he went out there one day, and a grizzly bear had killed some sheep, and he went up, and the bear come after him, and he shot at it, and he missed, and the bear got him down, and put a hole in his head, grabbed him on the shoulder, took him in the brush, and he buried him. And when the bear left, and the guy still alive, he got out, and he took off crawling, got through a couple fences, and got up on this ridge, and one of the neighbors just happened to be riding by on a horse and found him, and he was still alive. And they got him into Great Falls, and after that he died. But Outdoor Life had written a story about that, and had interviewed the rancher up here to get it, and there's a lot more to it. It's just really a great story. But you know, the bottom line, in 1973, if Outdoor Life hadn't written that story, who would have to be really careful, because if the ground was frozen or there was ice, it'd ricochet up into the helicopter. But
So how far was he gonna be shot then? How close was he?
we're at the telephone pole.
Oh, that close?
Oh, yeah.
Oh. Well, did you have to leave the car to hit it?
Behind.
Yeah, or shoot behind?
'Cause you're going
Because
faster.
You're going faster than, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So, but if I didn't have that with my 5 counties, I could not have kept on. There would have been no way whatsoever.
So when the empty comes out of the shotgun, was it you don't want to go up into the rotor? Or-
No, it would go down.
It would all-
Yeah, yeah.
Because the wind came in.
Right.
And so was it just an auto loader or?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, it's all.
So you have to take 2 shots very often?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I mean, the shells were the cheapest part of that whole program right there. Just to make sure you got it done and, you know, and it was finished. You know, it's, because a lot of times there's multiple, sometimes, like on the reservation. So to collect this money for the counties, and almost all the counties within Montana have that assessment. That, and it was put in place by the cattle producers. So what would happen is you'd get one guy, he would go around to his neighbors and all the different ranches, and they would sign this. And once they got over 50% of the cattle numbers, then they could assess this, and they would come up with their price. And each county is different as far as how much cattle trouble they're having. If they're having a lot of cattle trouble, they'll say, yeah, we'll pay $3 a head. or even if it's less, we'll pay 50 cents, you know. And even though if you're somebody that doesn't have any coyotes, you're living out on the flat, they do that to help the other producers. It's like having a fire department, you know, you're paying taxes to the fire department and hope you never need them, but you'll be dang glad to have them if you do. And so anyway, it's a tax that, once they get that passed, if they ever become unhappy with it, they take a petition and they run it around again and they stop it. There ain't too many taxes you can do that with. And I've yet today, in all these years that they've done that, in all these counties, I've never heard of any county ever stopping it. So on the reservation, they couldn't collect that, because this is through the county assessor that they're bringing it from these other counties. So there was one of the tribal elders that would collect the money and then work with me. And so these different tribal members on these ranches would want this flying in the spring at calving time. And so the Blackfeet Stock Growers, so they organized this Stock Growers Association. They would collect that money. He would call me and tell me, you know, fly here for a half hour. These guys bought an hour. And then when I would fly, I'd get back to him. Okay, we've got this many coyotes and we flew here and there and there. So, and that worked so well through the years. But that was the only way we could do it, because they couldn't do that assessment.
Did you always stop and land and pick up the coyote?
We used to, when the coyotes were worth money, and then we land, and then I hated that because I was the one that had to skin them, but the money would come back to the program. And I never got a nickel out of it anyway, but it was just a lot of work, and then it was frozen
And
and
a lot
stuff.
of fleas.
Fleas, oh my gosh. I was so happy when the coyote prices tanked and we didn't have to do that anymore, but it did help.
I remember going to school with fleas in the back of my hair.
And he hung out of that helicopter without a door.
Yeah, if it was warm, we'd take the door off,
Yeah.
but I had a seatbelt on.
Yeah, I see.
But he had to hang out there.
But you flew with the same pilot for 26 years?
I've flown in my career with 18 different helicopter pilots.
18.
Yeah, but this one particular that was in that picture, I flew with him for 26 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and he was good. They were all good, you know, but he.
Always safe?
Huh?
Were they always safe, or did they scare you sometimes?
Oh, we had some close calls. Okay, so there's one chapter in this book, it's called Everything Happens for a Reason. And that addresses this whole issue we're just now talking about. And, yeah, and that was with Tim. And so some of the names, half the names I changed, and half the names I left. So when we got ready to do this, and I talked to say, yeah, I'll leave my name in there. But, you know, anybody, especially along the front, you know, because it's kind of a tight-knit community, they know if the name changed, they know who it was.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I was nice. I did bring a lot of politics and baloney into it. You know, I think it turned out really well. And when we got done with it, we were gonna, after the 5 years, we were just, you know, like say Maureen did all this work and we'll just self-publish it. And, you know, and I got thinking, this is a good book, you know, and we should send it to somebody to make sure our paragraphs are in the right place. And like I would, in a paragraph, I would say, he said, she said, they said, you know, and so we sent it to this gal, and she just kind of cleaned it up and did it in dialogue, you know, how people would be just talking. And so when all was said and done, it did it. We've got nothing but really good reviews back from people. They say they really enjoy it.
Are most of the people from Montana that buy it, you know?
You know, actually, there's, especially up here, I mean, there's been a lot sold here. And Tim McConicle on KRTV News did a segment, and that just,
There's a podcast with
He did a
him.
podcast.
They spent 6 hours at our house.
but that podcast is worth mentioning. I don't know how they.
I should have put it right in here. If you Google McConicle Chronicles, Mike Hoggan, you'll see it live.
It's a 45-minute interview, and kind of a lot of things we were talking about here, but even more.
But he asked quite a few questions of Mike, so.
So, yeah, and then it's on Amazon, and then all of a sudden we're getting like all these orders from, I mean, all over the country, really. And I think once it really gets going.
A lot of people are using them for gifts, you know, just, you know, like we did these little gift things, you know, Adventure Inside or Stay Wild. so a lot of people, and from our website, we give free shipping too, and we'll wrap them.
So the first one of these we did, you know, like I say, I'm kind of a low-key guy, and Mari said, oh, we're gonna go to the library in Blair, and I thought, wait. And so I said, well, we'll go entertain them 2 people who show up. We went there, and there was 40-some people. I mean, I just about died. And then she sets up show. Well, there are 52 people there. And then even Dutton.
That's because they all thought they were gonna be in the book.
There was quite a few of my cooperators, but one of them, there's one in there, Rancher Valves, that killed grizzly, and he's long since passed away. But his widow was there, and I just really liked that lady, and I hadn't seen her in so long. And she walked into that book signing, you know, and she come up to me, and she had this book, and she says, I'll bet Bert's in here somewhere. I'll bet you're right.
Is the guy that killed the grizzly and buried him and finally got caught?
So-
Oh, and Shoto in there?
Oh, no, that could be a whole different.
Oh, he's got many more.
Oh, there.
Book number 2.
Oh, I tell her no.
You told her no the first time.
Last time.
Where do you guys live?
By Blair.
Blair.
Yeah. But,
And for years and years, or?
I've been where we live now
33?
34 years, yeah. Quite a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've been asked to do Audible with this book, you know, and he's got a great voice, I think, so he could do Audible. We just were talking earlier with Millie about maybe getting a studio.
Oh?
A lot of these.
We did.
We're discussing, I'm always working behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, like truck drivers, things like that, I'm an Audible person, you know, it's hard for me to read.
So, I don't know, winter time or something, I might look into that. It'd be something to do, you know.
We're the second book.
Just make it a trilogy.
That's true, that's true.
Okay, now you were in this job for 42 years. How long have you been married?
To this wife, no. All together? Maureen and I, 11 years.
But we knew each other as
A long
kids.
time ago, yeah.
50 years later, we got together.
Yeah. So, and
I know
that,
she's keeping you on your
and
toes.
she did, and like I say, if it wasn't for her, there'd be nothing here. I mean, just,
I wake up at 3 o'clock every morning, 3:30, and then when Susie wakes up, look at this, look at this.
oh, yeah.
But let me have my coffee first.
Anyway, yeah.
But, you know, he's a great storyteller, and he loves to preserve history, and, you know, you gotta appreciate people like that. Because, you know, I mean, once it's gone, and, you know, the new generation, they don't really care about history anymore. You know, they just, you know, so it's up to maybe
They're
your
well in
group.
time.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah,
When it matters to them.
oh, yeah.
But, anyway, well, I thank you guys for, unless you got anything else?
And if you guys wanna purchase a
Oh,
book, Millie
yeah.
will, ring you up on it, and,
Yeah, thank you, Melanie.
thank you, from Casapia Books in
What's the
downtown
price of
Great Falls.
20. There's a lot of pictures in there too. And,
Yeah,
and we're talking about the true stories. Well, they are true stories, because like I found out a long time ago, and somebody told me when I was young, you know, if you're gonna stretch the truth, you have to have the perfect mind. Tell the same story the same way every time. And I ain't gonna screw with that. I'll just do it right.
there's a lot of stories that women would like in here,
Oh, yeah.
like the chicken
Chicken
lady,
lady.
oh, that's funny,
Yeah.
yeah,
So, yeah, thank you so much, Sarah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
All right, well, thank you so much, Mike. This was great. I really encourage you guys to purchase the book. He was sitting outside signing them before even coming in, so you gotta get them now. And then, Millie, you'll have extra copies over at Cassiopeia later, so if you wanted to pick one up later on as well, please do so. At the library, we always have things going on. We do have a new program starting on Thursday. It's creative photography led by one of our volunteers, Tyson. And that's a 4-week course, so it's every other week starting on Thursday. 6:30 right here in the room, and then we have lots and lots happening. We just scheduled our witches talk, which we did last year, and we had over 60 people in this room, so
What's
figure that. It's about the Scottish witch hunts, so it's a lot of information to unpack in that one. But we always have things going on. We always have fun stuff happening here at the library. Thank you all for being here today, and travel safe when you go home. Thanks.
Thank you.